Meeting of the Fitchburg City Council. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone else in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and city of residence. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. This means you. Councillor Kuchar, would you please lead us in the salute to the flag?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Okay, Councillor Kuchar.
Here.
Councillor Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Di Natale.
Here.
Councillor Fleming.
Here.
Councillor Green. Here. Councillor Schultz.
Here.
Councillor Van Hazinga.
Here.
Councillor Walsh.
Here.
President Zarella.
Here.
Councillor Boschman.
Present.
We have a full board of 11 members.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, 10. Sally Cragen's not with us today.
Thank you very much. And at the time that we convene the joint session, I will ask for a roll call from the planning board. All right, we have no one remotely signed in for public forum this evening. In the audience, I know we have Ms. Ch, and then following that, anyone else wishing to participate in public forum may approach the podium, identify yourself by name and city of residence, and the agenda item on which you wish to speak, and you will have not more than 2 minutes.
Jacqueline Wetchy, Fitchburg resident, 185-24. So the school department decided to hide $645,000 for transporting migrant children last school year until after the election and to not seek reimbursement from the state. This is unacceptable. Councillor Cragen has talked before about the heavy burden placed on municipalities by unfunded state mandates. This is a perfect example of that. She and the rest of you should be outraged, and you should refuse to raise or appropriate funds for this. You and the school department and the mayor should all be going to our state senator and our state rep and telling them we need the state to reimburse us for these costs, as they have already done with at least 22 other communities. Most of you act like our state legislators are the best thing since sliced bread, so you should ask them to help us with this. I tried, but they didn't respond to me, because I'm just a peon and I don't hang out at the Fae Club.
Any further public comment at this time? Seeing none, we have our announcements this evening. The next meeting of the Widowed Helping Widowed Support Group will take place on Thursday, November 21st, 2024, from 2:30 until 4:30 p.m. in the fireplace room of the Fitchburg Senior Center. Bonnie Shaler and Bernie Schultz will co-facilitate the meeting. The City of Fitchburg Health Department will be hosting a community Narcan and overdose prevention training on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, in collaboration with Making Opportunity Count at 40 Fairmont Street in Fitchburg. Doors will open at 4:30 p.m. for resource tables and refreshments and training. For resource tables and refreshments, and the training will begin at 6 p.m. Members of the community are invited to attend this program. Free refreshments will be available, and Narcan will be distributed at the conclusion of the training. Pre-registration is not required, but is encouraged. You can call 978-829-1854. That's 978-829-1854. Or email S.Christensen, that's SCHRISTENSEN, at fitchburgma.gov to register or to get more information. On November 21st, that's this Thursday, at 5 p.m. at the British American Club, 1 Simons Road in Fitchburg, Councillor Kuchar will be hosting a Ward 3 community meeting. This Saturday, November 23rd, from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, that's 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., St. Bernard's Elementary School will be having their holiday fair at 254 Summer Street. December 1st, here on the Upper Common, we will be having our holiday tree lighting at 5:30 p.m. We will have Santa, we will have carols, we will have refreshments and hot cocoa, and it'll be a ton of fun, as it always is, so please join us. And lastly, and thank you to my colleague for suggesting this, I'd like to note for the public that starting this winter season, the fines for parking in a snow emergency will increase to $100 per violation. It's very simple. When the city announces a snow emergency parking ban, get your car off the road. I know it's inconvenient, but if cars are on the road during a snow emergency, the plows can't get through, and even more importantly, emergency vehicles can't get through to people who might be homebound and in distress. That concludes our announcements for this evening. I would like to entertain a motion for suspension of the rules to take petition 19924 out of order so that we can have our public hearing up front and let our colleagues on the planning board go about their evenings.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Is there any objection? Seeing none, it is unanimous. So we have before us now petition 19924, Community Development and Planning Board to amend the Fitchburg Zoning Ordinance to comply with Mass General Laws Chapter 40A, Section 3A, multifamily zoning as of right in MBTA Communities. At this time, we will be convening in joint session with the Planning Board. So first, I would like a vote of the council or unanimous consent to that effect.
So moved. So moved.
I have a motion and second to enter into joint session with the Planning Board. There is no objection, so we will do that. Before we begin, I would like to ask the Planning Board to please take a roll call.
All right. Please state if you, I'm not sure if this is on. Please, okay, thanks. Please state if you're here. Peter, can you indicate you're here? Can you speak? Oh, he's on mute. I can see you raise your hand. I know. Tracy McGrath?
Here.
Alex Lopez?
Here.
Paul Fontaine?
Here.
Amanda Keck? Here. Paula Karen? Here.
Thank you very much. And I know we have a presentation, so you may proceed when ready. Oh, yes. Sorry, before we begin, I would just like to ask the remote members of the Planning Board to please turn your cameras on. Council policy generally is that when we have remote participation, we need to be able to see the participants. After the presentation. Okay.
Before we kick off with the slideshow, I wanted to introduce our consultant who has been working diligently with us since last year, so just over a year now. Diana Marsh from Reading Collaborative. She's passing out a little informational guide right now.
Thank you.
Mr. President, the mic's not working. Her mic's not working.
Is my mic not working?
Up to you. I can also check in with Dan if you need me to.
All right,
Yeah, mic's not working. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Should try.
or you can try presenting.
I'm going to introduce, and then Diane's going to present, so this will work for now. Thank you. So, thank you. I'm sorry to repeat myself now, but Diana Marsh from Dream Collaborative is the consultant that's been working with us, and we've been working diligently, but the planning board chair and vice chair, our principal planner, our ZBA chair, Christine Tree, and our consultant, Diana Marsh, myself, our building commissioner at times, Felix Zimmel. It has been a team effort to go through this zoning and make the changes that are necessary in order to comply with MBTA Communities. So for folks that may not know, MBTA Communities, also known or it's actually called 40A, Section 3A, I believe, right, is the Mass General Law that the legislature adopted that requires us to now comply with creating a zone that allows density by right, and there's a certain number of units that we have to allow by right, and I'm not going to go into that because Diana will go into it through the slideshow, but we worked for over a year now and worked collaboratively, and I think we have a good product here that basically takes our existing smart growth district and uses that district as our 3A district in order to comply. So we're actually very fortunate as a community that there really aren't significant changes to our zoning. There is language changes in order to comply, but the effect is this law is very similar to smart growth, which we already adopted. So practically, we're not going to see big changes to the way we've been operating because we've already been operating under this in this manner through our smart growth zoning. So with that, I'm going to let Diana take it away. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. Sorry, let me just make sure that I'm able to control the slides. Okay, great, thank you. I hope people in the council and the planning board who are here and present got a copy of this brochure that we have. Please don't try to read the whole thing now, but it provides an overview of the 3A law requirements and how Fitchburg is going to be complying with that. As Liz said, my name is Diana Marsh. I'm an urban planner with Dream Collaborative, which is a Boston-based architecture and planning company. And we are working for the city through a series of grants provided by the Mass Housing Partnership. So all of our work has been paid for by MHP. And I've been working with Liz and Chantel on this, and also a lot with Paula Caron and attorney Christine Tree from the ZBA and Felix from the building commissioner. So we've had a lot of meetings. We've been working on this almost a year and a half, and I think we have a good solution for the city. So I have about 45 slides to go through, but I'm going to go through them really fast, some of them fast, and please stop me if you want to hear more about some of them, but I don't want to take over the whole evening or put people to sleep, so I'm going to try to go through some of this pretty quickly. But I'll start off with a description of talking about what is the 3A law and what is it intended to achieve, what is Fitchburg's obligation as assigned by the state, and what kind of different areas have we looked at for potential 3A compliance, and then what have we finally decided to do for 3A compliance, and then look at a few the major themes of what things we need to adjust in the zoning code, mostly in the smart growth zoning district section, and then a few more minor modifications that need to be made, such as to the rules and regulations and the city zoning map and the smart growth district design standards. So just a preview, these are the zones that are going to be part of the 3A compliance in the city. The dark blue along Main Street there is, so the dark blue and the yellow are right now part of your existing 40R downtown smart growth district. Light blue in the middle, which is the core of Main Street where you have a lot of retail businesses, is going to be something called a mandatory mixed-use district where ground floor retail is going to be required. And then the yellow areas outside that are going to be, also part of 3A. And so again, that blue area and that yellow area are also part of your existing 40R smart growth district. Then we've also added in the Fitchburg State University district just because we needed a couple more hundred more units in our capacity calculations, and I'll explain that later on. But so the FSU zone is going to be part of 3A, but it's not part of your 40R. So it's a little confusing. And then of course you also have the West Smart Growth Zoning District, which you can see on your handout, which is a current Smart Growth 40R district, but that's not going to be a 3A. So there's a little bit of mixing and matching. So the 3A law was passed in 2021. It's a state law that I'm sure you've all heard about because it's been in the news a lot, aimed at making it easier to build more housing across the state. And as Liz said, it's Chapter 40A, the Zoning Act, new Section 3A, called Multifamily Zoning as of Right in MBTA Communities. And it's overseen by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which was originally, it started off with DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, and it got elevated and renamed to be an executive office in the state. And it applies to 177 cities and towns that have MBTA transit service, or in some cases, some communities that are next to cities and towns with transit service. So as you have probably all heard, the law is trying to address the housing crisis in Massachusetts, the high housing prices and shortage of housing, the few houses being built today, and a mismatch between what a lot of communities, particularly in the suburbs, are building, with being single-family housing and higher price housing versus the needs of a lot of our diverse housing households today, such as smaller household sizes, households with no children, more singles and empty nesters, people who don't have a car and want to, be able to get by without a car. And the law is designed to take advantage of of lands that are near transit across the state to create more compact and walkable communities, which would also be better for the climate by allowing people to have options to driving everywhere. And the law requires that these 177 communities create zoning that allows, as of right, multifamily housing without need for a variance or a special permit. But it doesn't require you to actually build the housing. It's just the zoning. It's the requirement to make zoning that allows this type of housing. And multifamily housing is not allowed in a lot of communities today. And of course, we have a lot of public opposition everywhere that make it difficult to build at scale. So this law is looking at addressing those issues. So for Fitchburg and for all the other communities that are subject to this law, the state has defined a certain amount of land and a certain number of housing units that have to be made possible through multifamily zoning that's as of right. They've defined a certain portion within each community that it has to be within a half mile of a train station. And all the zones together in one community have to have an average minimum density of 15 units an acre. And you can't include, there's a whole bunch of things that you can't include in the zoning, such as precluding families with children. Basically, they want the zoning to be as general as possible so that it's not onerous for somebody who wants to build housing. Compliance deadlines, the towns that have the rapid transit subway already had to comply last December. Fitchburg and other rail communities have to apply by the end of this year, which is why we are here to talk to the City Council about the zoning. And then adjacent communities are also subject to need to comply by the end of this year. And compliance means passing zoning and then submitting the application to the state HLC department. If you comply with 3A, then you are allowed to continue being eligible for a lot of different state funding sources. If you don't comply, then you lose eligibility for these funding streams. You may have seen some of these maps that are trying to track the status of how different communities around the state are complying or not. So far, as of last week, we have 33 communities that are all done and certified as compliant, the green ones. And the kind of dark brown are the ones that have submitted their compliance application already, and they're being reviewed by the state. And 21 have adopted zoning, but they haven't submitted their applications yet. So, and on and on. So there's more than 70 or 80 that are already in the process of complying. And you've probably heard about the two that are holdouts, Milton and Holden, that have said they're not going to go along with it and are trying to fight the state. So Fitchburg's 3A requirement, this is from the state website. You can look up the requirements for all the different communities in the state, and it shows that according to the state records in 2020, Fitchburg had about 17,000 housing units, and so this state assigned a multifamily unit capacity that you would need to provide, or that you'd need to allow through your 3A zoning of 2,618 units, which is equal to 15% of the housing stock in 2020. And the state also requires a minimum land area of 50 acres, and that 75% of those 50 acres should be within a half mile of a train station. And of course, you have Wachusett and downtown, but we've been focusing on the downtown train station. So this is a map showing the two, I spent like 5 minutes looking at Wachusett with Liz, but for various reasons, including topography and access, we decided that was not going to be workable for 3A zoning. And you have a lot of great things happening downtown. So again, these are the requirements for Fitchburg: 2,618 units, 50 acres, and 75% of the land needs to be within a half mile of one of your two transit stations. And then this is the part that I was going to go through really quickly, because this content is also in the handout, and a lot of these issues, a lot of these requirements don't seem to be an issue in Fitchburg, but I'm also working in some very affluent suburbs that are very unhappy about all of these requirements. So you can put the zoning on top of existing development. Your unit capacity is calculated by a spreadsheet that the state provides, so that every community is calculating in the same way. It's an Excel spreadsheet where you put in basic zoning parameters, and you put in all of your parcels from GIS that are in the zone, and then it calculates what the theoretical unit capacity is. Each 3A zone has to be at least 5 acres, and if you have multiple disparate zones, at least half of them have to be contiguous, so that you get kind of a neighborhood scale potential for multifamily housing and for kind of creating a real sense of community. And again, the minimum density has to be at least 15 units an acre. The state definition of multifamily is a building with 3 or more units or 2 duplexes on one lot. Fitchburg has defined multifamily as 4 or more units, so that's one of the things we had to tweak in the zoning just for the 3A districts. The zoning has to be as of right with no special permit or variances. You can still provide dimensional and other kind of bulk standards in your zoning bylaw, such as building height and setbacks and coverage. And you can also continue to do site plan review on projects in the 3A zone to help regulate things like landscaping and lighting and traffic access, as long as these are not a means to deny a project. They're really more a means to make a better project. And then there's a lot of regulation, there's a lot of guidance about the zoning not causing undue burdens that would make it harder for somebody to actually build the housing. So you cannot impose more burdens on the multifamily zone than you would elsewhere in the town. You can't put really onerous parking ratios on that compared to what you might be doing elsewhere in the town or a city, or what's generally considered reasonable or fair. You can't require higher energy efficiency. You can't require that, you can't cap the bedroom size or the number of buildings or the number of occupants, and you can't restrict it by age. So you can allow senior housing in a 3A zone, but you can't require that it be senior housing. And then affordability, statewide, they didn't want to require a high affordability ratio because that would make it more difficult, in usual market conditions to provide that kind of housing. But of course, in Fitchburg, in your smart growth district, you already have a 20 to 25% affordability requirement. So for cities like Fitchburg that already have affordable housing mandated through a 40R, which you do, you can continue to use that in your 3A district. So towns that don't have any affordable housing mandate now have to, can't require more than 10%, or they have to go through the process of doing an economic feasibility analysis to justify, to show how like a higher affordable requirement would not be onerous for a developer. So we spent last year working out a pretty cool approach to 3A, and then the state issued a new policy that allowed you to have mandatory mixed use. So the original 3A last year said, we're really focused on housing. We want you to allow housing in these districts, and you can't require mixed use because that will be difficult for a developer to build or difficult to finance. And originally it said you can incentivize it by doing something like offering an extra floor, or you could offer other bonuses for it, and you could allow it, but you couldn't require it. And then after a few towns, I think led by Brookline, complained about that because they wanted to be able to keep the retail cores of their towns while also doing the 3A zoning, the state changed their policies and added this new option for mandatory mixed use. And so that's what we're doing in Fitchburg along the core of Main Street. We're going to require mandatory mixed use there with ground floor retail so that you can continue the core, that retail frontage along your downtown and hopefully have, active streets and a downtown feeling there. And so you can have an MMU zone in your 3A, but it cannot account for more than 25% of your total 3A unit capacity. And the zoning boundaries for your MMU have to be approved by HLC. And we've already done that. We've submitted Fitchburg's MMU to HLC like back in December last year, and they approved the general location of this MMU location. This is not so much an issue in Fitchburg, but the state defined what they call excluded land everywhere for 3A, and it includes all public rights-of-way, publicly owned land, and some environmentally constrained lands such as rivers and wetlands and wellhead protection areas and things like that. And you can include that kind of excluded land, public land and rights-of-way in your 3A zones. They can count towards the minimum land area, but the compliance model that calculates unit capacity does not assign capacity to those acreages. So you can put a street, for example, in your 3A zone, and that'll help you reach your 50-acre minimum, but the compliance model doesn't calculate any units, of course, being on top of a street or on top of publicly owned lands. You can assign a publicly owned parcel to be, you can say we're going to dispose of this to build housing, for example, and you have to do some documentation with that, and then you can include that as part of your capacity. But that hasn't been an issue here with the approach we've worked out for Fitchburg. So I kind of said all this already. We started, this is just a timeline, we started back last summer in 2023. We evaluated a bunch of districts around the downtown, trying to find ways to not have to include the core of Main Street, because at the time you couldn't require mixed use. And then the city came out with this mixed use option, so then we incorporated that into there, and in December we submitted this form and we got it approved from the state of where this mixed use area would be. And then the state offers an optional pre-adoption review if you want to have them look at your proposed zoning changes before you adopt them. So we did that also. And because a large part of our compliance area for 3A is also 40R, we had to submit the proposed zoning changes to the 40R division at HLC and also to the 3A division in HLC. So both those departments reviewed our zoning and got back to us maybe a couple months ago for 40R and like a week ago or 2 weeks ago for 3A. So we have good, they had some minor modifications, but generally it was well received and nothing major that needs to be changed, I think. So we're on our way to adopting the zoning. We've incorporated their revisions and suggestions into the zoning that I think you all got a copy of last week. So here we are starting our public hearings, and we are hoping to adopt the zoning as required by December 31st. And then we will, assuming you do it a little bit before December 31st, then we will help Fitchburg to submit the final application to HLC by the deadline at the end of the year. So going back to where we started off in 2023, we looked at some of these other districts that are shown in color here for potential 3A zones, and we but then after they started allowing mixed use, we went back to looking at the area highlighted with a pink outline, which is your downtown smart growth district. And we decided that we could meet almost everything, or we determined we could meet almost your full 2,600 unit requirement within that downtown smart growth district. And again, the goal was to preserve the retail frontage and character along the core of Main Street. So the map on the top is the existing West 40R Smart Growth District. And then on bottom in the black outline is the current downtown smart growth zoning district. So these two districts are addressed together in one section of the zoning code, 181.84, I think. So we have changed the zoning for the downtown smart growth, and in doing that, it also changes the applicable zoning for the west smart growth district also. So those are together having a few tweaks to the zoning, but again, the West Smart Growth District is not part of our 3A compliance. It's a 40R only, whereas the Downtown Smart Growth is both 40R and 3A. And background on 40R, which you probably already know, the 40R was a law from 2004 to encourage smart growth and development and redevelopment in already dense urban walkable areas close to transit and amenities, and again, to allow as-of-right development in those kinds of locations. And so the city, I'm kind of backing up now, the city created the West Zone in 2010 and the Downtown Smart Growth Zone, I think, in 2020. And to date, 3 40R projects have been completed, bringing nearly 300 smart growth units to the city, and these come with incentive funding. So that you can see the 3 projects here, the Fitchburg Arts Community, which is going to be completed in early next year, and the Moran Square Apartments, and then in the West District, the 245 River Street, former Premier Box property. So the new approach, again, is we're going to be relying on this downtown smart growth for most of it. Because of the cap that your mixed-use district cannot be more than 25% of your capacity, the model calculated a certain amount of yield, like 900 units that would be possible in this downtown mixed-use, mandatory mixed-use area, but that was more than 25% of the total, so we couldn't count all 900 units. So we had to back some out, and then we were a little bit shy of the 2618 units that we needed to get. So we decided to add the FSU district. The FSU district is a lot of publicly owned land, of course, being FSU, and so those lands are not going to be calculated as potential housing yield in the compliance model, but it's okay because there's like a few properties more at the southern end that are not publicly owned, and those few properties were enough in the compliance model to provide the extra 200 or so units that you needed to meet the full 2618 number of housing units. So the map on the left shows how we submitted it to the state. It's just a technical thing about not having orphan parcels. The one on the right shows in yellow, there's some kind of like orphan parcels on either side of Main Street. In the middle that we are, right here, that we are, we're going to include as part of the 3A non-mandatory mixed-use district, I think. That's getting into the details. So here's a table. The bottom row is what we're proposing to the state, but I just wanted to show our process here. First, we looked at this first row. We looked at the downtown smart growth district alone, and we had 2,600 units when we didn't have FSU, and we needed another 18 because. Oh, yeah, sorry. And then the second row, we had to cap the number in the mandatory mixed use to be 25% of the total. So then we were falling a lot shorter of the 2,618 units required. Then the third row, we added in FSU, and that gave us 2,800 something. And then when we capped the FSU at 25%, we're actually exactly at the 22618 units that we need. So you can see these 4 different districts that are, 4 different districts that are contributing to the total. And then just a high-level overview of some of these zoning code revisions that we're doing. In the FSU district, we are changing the allowable uses to include multifamily as of right. Right now, it requires a special permit, so we're changing that to allow 2, 3, and 4 and larger unit buildings as of right. And the reason we have to include 2-family is because the state law counts as multifamily both a 3-unit building and like 2 duplexes on one lot. So if somebody wants to have like a duplex in the front and a duplex in the back, for example, that counts as multifamily. So you have to allow 2-family homes. We are not specifically requiring mixed use here. It's only along the core of Main Street. We had to lower the minimum lot area slightly in order to get enough yield in this compliance model. We're increasing the height here from 3 stories to 5 stories. Increasing the minimum front yard a little more, so there'll be bigger front yards and actually bigger backyards. And then the existing off-street parking regulations will still apply here with, between 1 to 2 spaces per unit, depending on the number of bedrooms. In the downtown smart growth zoning district overall, so meaning both what's shown here in blue and the yellow areas, we're increasing the maximum density from 50 to 85 units an acre with the same height limit of 70 feet in order to get the unit capacity that's required from the state requirement. Whether we increase the setback between buildings that are on the same lot from 15 to 20 feet for fire separation. That's apparently what the fire department would require anyway. And we removed a few little things in there that were talking about discretionary, at the discretion of the planning board and that kind of things, because we can't have any discretionary elements here for smart growth. And then the west, again, the west zoning district is not a 3A, it's still just a 40R, but within that we are proposing to remove the list of parcels that's in the zoning code and instead include a new map of this district on the city's zoning code, city zoning map, and probably needing to have a second page with like a detail map of the downtown that would show these different 40R and smart growth overlays. We're simplifying the number of allowable, what is an allowable use in the west zone to be multifamily, standalone, or mixed use. And we have a new definition for mixed use that I'll talk about next. And again, increasing the setback between buildings on the same lot to 20 feet. So mixed use, we spend a lot of time talking about where and how to define mixed use in the smart growth section. So it's not really changing that much, just kind of more worded to be more clear, I think. Mixed use is optional in the West Smart Growth District, and it's optional in the non-mandatory mixed use part of the 3A within your downtown smart growth zoning district. And we clarified it to say mixed use means both residential and non-residential. So you can't have like offices over retail. It has to be housing over retail. Residential uses have to occupy at least 50% of the building floor area. And then we wrote a specific definition of the kinds of non-residential uses that could be used here in mixed-use development, so that it's not any longer referring to a particular table in the table of uses for a particular zone. So I hope it's more clear now. And then, let's see. So this, again, is the map of where the mixed-use districts are. Residential-only buildings are prohibited here, and we have the same definition that we're using in the West here, which is that residential should be on upper floors only. And then an additional requirement, the ground floor non-residential uses such as retail shall occupy at least 75% of the street frontage so that you really get a meaningful space for retail, and should have a minimum depth of 20 feet. So you really can get like a store or a business there and not just like a display window. Parking, there's requirements in the state law for parking for smart growth. For 3A districts, so you're not allowed to require parking for the non-residential portion of a mixed-use building. So we've added that now. We've changed that in the zoning. So in the core MMU district, no on-street parking is required for non-residential uses. And then outside the core area, if there's parking nearby within 800 feet that can be walked to safely, then you can use that instead of having parking on your parcel for your non-residential use. Then the residential parking is the same as it says now. It leaves it up to the applicant to decide how much parking they want, but they can provide between 1.25 and 2 spaces per unit in the downtown. And I think the current zoning says that the planning board may require guest parking, so we had to change that to be more absolute, not discretionary. So it just says that you must provide 1 space for 10 units, guest parking. Affordability is the same as what we had before in the smart growth zoning district for 40R. In projects of 13 or more units, 20% of the units have to be affordable. And if you're doing senior housing, 25% have to be affordable. And again, this applies to all your smart growth districts, so West, the downtown smart growth, and the mandatory mixed-use portion of downtown smart growth. And FSU is not 40R, so it's not subject to these affordability requirements. Multifamily regulations are another section of the zoning code. We added a little sentence to that section saying that FSU and the smart growth, all smart growth zoning districts are exempt from those multifamily regulations because they have a lot of discretionary things in there. And we adjusted the definition in multifamily for FSU to talk about those, the state's, to match the state's definition of, 2 duplexes on a lot or 3 or more units in a building. And we made those uses as of right, as I said earlier. Elsewhere in the city, multifamily is still defined as 4 or more units in a building. And then there are some administrative changes that need to be made, mostly based on comments from the 40R division, about some of them about the time frame of how soon the approvals will be done for 40R applications, and we added some language to clarify to allow the city staff to have time to make sure the applicant submits a full application before they start the clock on the review period. And we're almost done. The other sections are, okay, so you can't require a special permit for 3A. So we now, we have exempted all the downtown smart growth and 40R districts from the special permit section of your zoning code. And we have also said, I think FSU doesn't have any special permit requirements the way it's written now because it's now going to allow multifamily as of right. It has very clear parking requirements, and there's not really any of the basic things that require a special permit. There's no special permits for smart growth. And then, however, you can still subject all these things to site plan review. So we are trying to clean up the site plan review section of the zoning, which is 181.95, and then there's a separate set of regulations in the planning board rules and regulations, and we are clarifying what goes in the regular zoning and what goes in the planning board rules and regs, and making sure that that's very clear for applicants. As I said, the zoning map is going to be revised. This is an interim zoning map, not the final one. I think the whole city zoning map is so huge that it's really hard to see the downtown. You have to zoom in really far. So we're going to have a second page that has, close-up of these overlays. And then there are these design standards that were done for the West Smart Growth originally. So we have to update those also for the state compliance review, and we've added some updates in here to refer to downtown streets like Main Street and some of the character of downtown buildings. And it was already a great set of standards. It didn't have a lot of discretionary stuff. It's pretty clear. So we had really minimal changes to that. And again, the map in there needs to be changed to show both the West and the downtown smart growth zoning district. And this is just my last slide. I wanted to put in a quote from the Attorney General. Compliance with the MBTA zoning law is not only mandatory, it's an essential tool for the Commonwealth to address its housing crisis, along with our climate and transportation goals. And while the housing crisis disproportionately affects communities of color and poor working families, it threatens all of us along with our economy, and thus requires all of us to do our part, including ensuring adequate development of affordable transit-oriented housing for our residents and families. And I think part of that is because some of these communities around the state are really trying to fight this, but most of them are going along with it. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Before I open the public hearing, are there any further comments that anyone has on this? Do you have anything to add, Director Murphy?
I believe Diana has done a thorough job of laying this out for us, so I don't have additional comments, but I am here for questions.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so on this matter, I will now declare the hearing open. Pursuant to our usual procedure, I will go to, for a public hearing, I will go to questions and comments by councillors or planning board members first. Because I know we do have some members of the public waiting to participate in the later portion of the hearing, I will request, though not require, that councillors and planning board members focus on questions at this time and save deliberative comments for after we close the hearing. That said, I know Councillor Green had a question.
Yes, thank you. I've got several questions. First, have all the land or housing owners in these new areas been notified that there will be potentially radical changes to their property, or that they can make radical changes to their property?
No, that hasn't happened, but I also would say that this isn't a radical change for most of the property owners because it's very similar to what's in our smart growth zoning already. So the FSU area is the bigger difference, but the amount of actually privately held land that can be developed is quite small.
So then am I to understand that as buildings exist, they are to stay, or are property owners now able to add 2 or 3 floors onto their existing space?
There is potential that they could do that, but they've already had that potential. That's not a significant change.
Okay.
So this is zoning that enables these developments to happen, but it doesn't require the developments to happen. It's really
Okay.
up to them.
Thank you. My next question is, the new building requirements require residential and commercial properties now be with green, all green improvements and green infrastructure. So who's going to absorb the additional cost of that in these districts? That's mandated by our building department.
So that is mandated by the state building code across the state. There's no, we did not take a look at that because there was no changes to energy efficiency requirements or green building requirements in this change. So our zoning is silent on that issue.
Okay. My next question is, because now by right, where are the sober housing units going to be in these districts?
I don't believe we zone for sober housing. So sober housing can look like a lodging house. Mm-hmm. So
Well, and again, I purposely am poking the bear on this because we have yet to define what and how that means in our city. And this, I know that zoning sometimes goes up against this with interpretation of language. So I want to make sure that when we move forward with something as big as this, that there's no room for this body to say, oh no, that means this, and this body to say, no, that's not what I meant this. So if we've identified every other area where people can or cannot build or occupy and what that can or cannot define, then how are we addressing that issue when it comes before us?
So I mean, that's a complex issue that my understanding is depending on how that sober housing is presented, it fits into another category of housing. So if there was an educational component to the sober housing, it is potentially exempt from zoning. It can go anywhere. If it is a lodging house that happens to be for folks that are in recovery, then it's a lodging house. If it's a two-family that is occupied by 2 households that are in recovery, then it's a two-family. So I don't know that zoning is going to answer these questions. I think that is building code and zoning, not zoning, but it's a part of it is building code, and part of it is about the nature of that property. But this does not answer that question.
All right.
I think we did define housekeeping unit. I think that might have already been defined in our zoning.
So-
Housekeeping unit.
I believe Attorney Tree can weigh in on this.
Yeah. I welcome that.
And by the way, Attorney Tree, as chair of the zoning board, feel free to chime in as a presenter at any time. We value your expertise.
So I just wanted to take a stab at answering the question. Ms. Murphy is right. The treatment of sober housing is dependent on how it functions, because it can function in many different ways. In our city, it has taken form most often as a lodging house. Sometimes it takes other forms. But I would certainly recommend that you address any question about instituting a zoning category for sober housing to our city solicitor's office, because the potential for defining a different treatment for a category of people who are suffering from a disability, I don't think is recommended, and may not be appropriate, may not be legal. So I certainly appreciate the thought, and this city has both good and bad experiences, and certainly where we have an applicant that is a responsible applicant, that is taking care of its residents and sometimes its patients. The city has welcomed that, and I'd certainly separately be happy to give you an example of a well-operated facility. But it's certainly not within this zoning amendment to undertake that task, and because sometimes we have a sober house that is actually operating a treatment program, and sometimes we have one that is not. It is just housing that seeks out people who are in recovery. And I think there's a great difference in treatment of those two different types of programs. One may, depending upon the program, be subject to the Dover Amendment exemption for an educational program. The other may not. But again, there are some very specific protections regarding disabled persons, persons who are in active recovery from substance abuse are considered disabled persons. So I would really hesitate to regulate at a zoning level specific to somebody's disability.
Thank you for that clarification. My last question is, and this may be appropriate for the chair, is that how will the zoning board handle all the new applications for 40R if there's that 120-day time period?
I can answer that. So the 120-day time period, we've done 3 previously, so that 40R doesn't change. So from when they stamp that application into the clerk's office, the 120-day starts, and we'll have a public hearing within 65 days, a scheduled public hearing for that purpose, for a site plan review. So pretty much the only thing required is a site plan review. This is a 40R is an expedited process. So why you have design standards and things already established is if they follow the criteria and meet the criteria, it should be a smooth process. So that's why we have those design standards. So it's for like a site plan aspect, to just say that complying with the design standards and any types of waivers, if anything, if there's sometimes there's issues with the existing building with the design standards. So we have to work around those and just see what else, what can be done in the best possible manner to meet the intent in those respects too. And then go over the parking pieces like that. It can certainly continue the hearing for another time, for a meeting or two. We have not really seen that when applications are pretty complete and thorough. So that's the idea of setting out this design criteria ahead of time in that aspect. So the 120 days is meant to be from the state an expedited 40-hour process in order to spur smart growth in a quick fashion, so it's not belabored. So we've worked through that previously, and also with permission of the applicant and the board, if there are extenuating circumstances that arise, that criteria can be extended by both parties in agreement as well. If they're waiting from something having to do with like floodplains or anything like that, that is something, if they're waiting from another agency outside of our control for any information that could extend the project. So, but we're all willing to work with them with that. But that's that piece of the 120 days.
All right. Thank you, and I commend the effort because this was quite an undertaking, so thank you for everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to note briefly, because I know that I don't think I've really chaired a meeting for any planning board members before. I do see a hand up from Mr. Capadagli. I keep a list of everyone who's raised their hands in the order that I've seen them, so if I haven't gotten to you and you've had your hand up for a while, I'll be getting to you. I just have to go in the order that I've got people in the queue. So next up I have Councilor Schultz.
Thank you, Councilor Zerlo. I just had a question about the FSU area, and I just was wondering about a little background on that, why that was chosen as opposed to maybe the Water Street area, going south of the Main Street area. You could comment on that, please.
I think that we did look at the Water Street area. It was a little less contiguous, right, to go Water Street versus FSU, which is directly connected. And we didn't need a lot of units. And knowing that there's, the south end of the FSU district is the area that can be developed, which is sort of connected to downtown. It felt like the natural selection to make. We do have a couple of parcels in that area that are potential for development. So that.
Because I think you mentioned earlier that there wasn't that much land that could be developed in the FSU area. So that's why I questioned that.
Yeah, that's correct. It's all in the south. It's all sort of connected to downtown. So, close North Street and North Street and Snow Street, close to the downtown area. That's really the area that can be developed. And it felt very much connected to downtown. So that's why we made that choice.
Because Water Street is pretty contiguous to the Main Street as well.
Can I just elaborate on what you were saying?
Absolutely.
So I think, Councilor Schultz, the other part of why, other than we only need a few units like Liz had mentioned, it's also easier because we could encompass the whole district versus taking another district and cutting it off somewhere. Yeah. Then you have the problem of where do you draw that line? Okay. And you create a district within a district. It was just cleaner taking that whole smaller portion of the FSU district.
I knew there had to be a reason.
Yeah.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Councilor Boschman.
I just got a quick question. Did I understand you right? You can build a multifamily house on 4,200 square feet?
Well, yes. The law doesn't talk about how small the parcel could be, but the compliance model looks at each parcel that you put in there from your zone, and the compliance model applies like a percentage of the land for open space and a percentage for parking and other things, and then it estimates how much is left for buildings. And so if you have a lot of really tiny parcels like you do in downtown Fitchburg, a lot of those don't get assigned any unit capacity in the model. That doesn't mean that somebody couldn't do something creative and build something there anyway, but the model assumes that only like larger buildable parcels will get built, and that's how it calculates the unit capacity.
Diana, I think he's talking about FSU, though. FSU would be 42.
Okay. Yeah, well, you can. I mean, my company is doing a project that's 85 units an acre on a lot that's 50 feet wide and 80 feet deep in Roxbury in Boston, and it's got 2 stacked flats, 6 deep, and a parking row on the right, and so there's 12 units on like something like a 4,000 square foot lot. So I can't remember the dimensions exactly, but it works out to like 90 units an acre. So, I mean, you can. I don't know if you can do that here in Fitchburg or in FSU, depending on what the buildings are like, but, you know, in theory, you can.
My other question is, I don't know if I read it right. I'm not an expert on zoning. I told Liz that already. I find it very tough to understand. You said, I thought I read in some of this work that she passed to me that you can't stop a person from putting an addition on or building a house because they're not parking. Is that true?
So to answer your question about the FSU district, because you mentioned the 4250,
Yeah.
You would be able to build a single, 2, 3 family on that, providing you met the site plan criteria in front of the planning board and based upon the assumption that you could meet the existing parking requirements for that building. So you still would have to have the parking. In FSU, it would be the 1 unit per 1 bedroom, 1.5 spaces per 2 bedroom, and 2 spaces per 3 bedroom unit. So you'd still need to have parking on the site. So the smaller lot size, you still have to have the space for the front yard, which we talked about, the 20-foot front yard, 20-foot rear yard, plus parking and the building. So
you still have parking. So if I put in a 4-family on 4,700 square feet, I have to have enough parking for 4-family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if they're all 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms,
They're all 3 bedrooms.
6 spaces. You know, I hear you talk, and I'm going to tell you something right now. I can understand some of the people that are protesting or fighting it, because I talked to Liz about it. I remember back in the 80s when I was growing up, and in the 80s it was kind of rough, the late 80s, early 90s. We were very condensed down here, downtown, and up where I live in Clegon. And it was like I'll tell you what it was like. It was like getting the top headlines. North Street was in the front page of the paper. The next day it was Daniel Street. The next day it was Green Street. The next day it was Fairmont Street. The next day it was Snow Street. And the next day it was Plymouth Street. And I mean, and it wasn't good advertisement. And when the city got involved and they started tearing down multi-family houses to make it better and put single-family houses, not only did we see a big change in the neighborhood, that it became more of a working class instead of a battle zone. And I think, even when I talked to Liz, I don't want to go back to the days when we have a battle zone. I understand what the state's doing. Don't get me wrong, and I agree wholeheartedly. We've got to try to keep good talent here in the States. But I also don't want to have a battle zone because we got to meet requirements, and the state just sits up there and they pass out these rules, and then we're stuck with them, and we get the battle zone, and we get all the problems. That's what I don't want, and I told her that, and I think I told Paul that when I was on the phone with him. So,
If I may, this is just my opinion here, but I think the properties that we ended up taking down and those old multifamilies, they were poor quality housing, and the reason we took it down is because they were mostly vacant. We weren't relocating people that were existing in those properties, so that was housing that was poor quality where the property owners were perhaps not doing a lot of tenant screening, probably the housing of last resort for some folks, and everything that goes along with substandard housing. But that's not something that we want to replicate. What we want is to encourage quality housing, and so it might be dense, but I don't think it's the density itself that caused those issues. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make.
and you're saying, did I understand it right, that if we implement this program, we can't, as a city or as a board, say, all we want is market rate housing? It has to be a mixed use?
The smart growth zoning, which we already passed.
Right, I
already
understand. I voted
exists,
for that, yeah.
requires that anything that's more than 13 units in size, set aside 20% as affordable housing, and that housing being 80% of area median income. So to that, but that's the maximum. We're not saying it needs to be 50% or any more than 20% affordable housing. In the FSU district, there's no affordable housing component because it's not smart growth.
Okay. I yield the floor, sir. I may have some questions after.
Thank you. Mr. Capadagli.
He's muted.
Oh, I think you were unmuted, but we're not hearing you. Now you're muted.
No,
No, you're muted now. Click the unmute button one more time until the red mic goes away. Okay, you're unmuted. Now let's see if we can hear you.
No.
No, your mic isn't picking you up.
Try logging out and logging back in.
What's that?
Maybe try logging out.
Yeah, why don't you try logging out and logging back in, and make sure that when you log in, you click the options to activate your computer mic. And as soon as I'm going to go to Councilor Cruz, but as soon as he's done, I'll come back to you once you're logged back in. And Councilor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the whole team for putting this together. It was a lot to go through, and the project was well explained. We definitely need housing across the state and the country, so I'm excited by this project. I think we need to use every tool in our toolbox to make it happen, whether it be your zoning changes or public or private partnerships, whatever we can do. But I do, in some respects, share the concerns of the gentleman from Ward 2 in that, when you put in multifamily housing, you do tend to get a lower income. What is Director Murphy, what is our broader strategy long-term to ensure that we're balancing out beyond just the minimum 20%, that we're balancing out our communities and ensuring that we already have quite a few low-income people living downtown already. So what is our broader strategy here?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it. We actually already designated the Smart Growth District as our HDIP zone as well. So HDIP is a tax credit incentive specifically for market rate housing. So that's certainly something that we've been pushing. It's a great local tax incentive for market rate housing. It's one of the few things, it's one of the only incentives for market rate housing out there. So we are working with developers very closely, and of course with any developer who comes to the city and wants to meet and discuss their development options, we're always saying, acknowledging that we have quite a bit of affordable housing already in our downtown area because just the nature of the fact that we have so many housing authority units in our downtown area. So we want more mixed and market rate units, not affordable housing projects in our downtown. So that's the message that we repeat. And then we also acknowledge that we do need affordable housing. We want to make sure that our community and our residents that are living here today and their children can live here tomorrow and in the future, and their grandchildren hopefully want to stay in Fitchburg too. And that's why we need to spread that affordable housing throughout the community and not just concentrate it in our downtown.
Thank you. Yeah, I also like the gentleman from Ward 2. It's tough going through that paperwork sometimes and not having a detailed understanding of zoning law. So
it's a lot.
It's a lot. Yes, a lot of it goes over my head. So thank you for answering that. I yield the floor.
Thank you. And I'll just say, I do know zoning law, and it's still a lot to go through. So, I do not see Mr. Capadagli back yet. I'll just put a pin in that. We'll come back to him when he's back. Councilor Fleming.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of questions. I don't even know where to begin, so I just started jotting them down as I was hearing things. How long ago did this housing model begin? When did this MBTA community arise?
Well, the law was passed in 2021, I think, and then the state was, after the law, the state Department of Housing and Community Development spent maybe a year or two, I don't know how long, like coming up with the guidelines to translate that law into practical things that each community would have to do. And then we started working with Fitchburg last May or June last year. So we've been working here specifically for Fitchburg for about almost a year and a half.
Okay, so so this started about the same time as we started getting new people coming to our state that may not be documented. I'm going to ask the question because many people out there are thinking it. Am I correct in asking that question?
I don't know the time frame of, I don't know when undocumented folks started coming in. I don't know if that was 2021.
It was 2020, actually.
Okay.
Okay. So I got that. So you're proposing 2,618 units. How many people would that bring into our community?
We can't answer that question because that's not
an estimate.
I mean, again, we're not proposing the units, like, they're not actually going to be built specifically. It's zoning to allow them to be built. And whether that number would actually be built, of course, depends on all the factors of each property and who owns it and what they think they can afford and whether they want to bother and everything.
So potentially, let's say they're all 2-bedroom units. Let's just say for 4,000, we'll estimate low. How does that affect our public safety, our fire department, our police? Now you've just increased their job and the things they have to take care. How do we address that?
Well, presumably, the added units would equate to added tax base. So that's the extent of what I could probably answer on that question, because we certainly weren't charged with addressing that issue. We were charged with addressing the zoning changes in order to comply with the law.
Not me.
And also by bringing more residents downtown, the hope is that you'll have more activity and more people walking around downtown at other hours, and perhaps more safety from that additional vitality of residents here.
But our infrastructure is already not where it should be, and now you're placing an extra burden on these trucks and these companies coming in to build these units. How do we address that?
I think those are great questions to ask the state. Presumably, that these are things that the state has to contemplate with these added units. Is there going to be some assistance that comes to the MBTA communities that have enabled zoning? My understanding actually is that there is some state funding, I think in the housing bond bill, connected to MBTA communities that actually comply.
So how many units are they proposing throughout?
Oh, just one moment, please. Mr. Capadagli, we do have you back now, and we can hear you, but until we get back around to you, can you just click that mute button, just because we're getting a little bit of feedback? Thank you. Perfect. We'll be back to you as soon as I can.
Okay, so I've got a few more questions.
Go ahead, Councillor.
So these are being proposed for the MBTA communities. So how many units are we proposing throughout the Commonwealth in these communities that are MBTA? What do we? So if we're proposing 2,618 in Fitchburg.
I can't remember what the total amount is across the state. But
177 communities that this impacts.
Yeah, I mean, you could look that up on the state website, of course.
Actually, if you could email that to me, I would appreciate it.
Okay, sure.
So with all the talk about green space, we're pretty much removing all the green space in our downtown area. We've been trying to create areas in our downtown area so that people have places to sit and reflect and whatever. You're taking that all away by adding all these units into those already congested areas.
This doesn't impact any existing park and public land. So just so you know, like the existing parks that do exist are not proposed to be developed as other uses.
Well, green space is different. Those are the little parks within a certain little community, like we have the Abolitionist Park.
Yeah,
And-
so if that is publicly, I'm not sure if that's publicly owned, that particular park, but if it's publicly owned, it is not counted towards the development in that, there's no presumption that that would be.
Well, you won't take it away, but you won't be adding any green space because you'll be putting units on the areas that could potentially be green space.
This zoning enables the housing to be developed, but if it doesn't prohibit anybody from choosing to take a parcel and making it green space. It also doesn't prohibit the city from acquiring a parcel and making it green space. So all this does is enable through zoning for a developer who owns a piece of property to be able to create dense housing with that piece of property. But like I said, it doesn't preclude us from acquiring property, turning it into green space, or allowing a private property owner to do that themselves.
And you mentioned that the more affluent communities are not going for this. What would be the reason for that?
Well,
basically what you said is we are a lower income community. That when you
No,
said that,
no, I didn't. I didn't mean that.
Like you meant that.
No,
enough.
I personally, my company is also working in Weston, which is extremely wealthy. So they're kind of, off the charts, different than most places. Most of the towns are complying, and a lot of affluent towns are excited about this because they want to use 3A to help create walkable downtowns and more places and destinations for people to come to, and bring more vitality downtown. And I think all different kinds of communities are excited about this law, but you only read in the paper about the ones that are fighting it, like Holden and Milton. So,
and why are they fighting it? Just curious.
They don't, state overreach. They don't think the state should be telling them what to do. They think it's going to bring in, poor people and drug dealers, or it's going to ruin their quality of life. It's going to overrun their schools, all the usual stuff.
Well, I agree with them. The state should not be telling us what we should be doing, but I yield the floor.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I go to Mr. Capadagli first? He's been waiting a while. Okay, sure. Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Just to answer the councilor's question about the total units required by the MBTA. So according to the Commonwealth Beacon, the total minimum unit capacity for the 177 communities that fall under the MBTA law is 297,190 units. That figure unit covers the communities that is zoning for, but not necessarily the number of units that would be built. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Capadagli, you can unmute yourself and ask questions now.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can. Excellent.
Okay, I figured it out. My questions may have been answered when I was trying to figure out how to use the microphone, but we'll try it one more time. This is a question for Diana.
Okay.
For communities throughout the Commonwealth that are not supporting the initiative or are reluctant to support the initiative, what are the common objections that you find?
I alluded to that already a little bit. I think they are concerned about, they think it's just not the state's prerogative to interfere with local matters, and they're concerned about a lot of people, when they think of apartments, they think of public housing, and they don't understand that apartments can be very beautiful and contextually sensitive places for people of all kinds of income levels. And they think that the multifamily housing will, create more need for community services than the amount of tax revenue it will generate. Those are some of the themes that we've heard. But like in Weston, for example, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to make our schools get overrun, and we showed them a lot of research that apartment buildings actually tend to have much fewer children, school-aged children per unit, and it would actually not be causing a lot of new school children to come into the town. And in a place like Weston, they have a lot of very large single-family homes, and some of those people, as they get older, would like to stay in Weston, but they can't find a smaller, easier-to-maintain house to move into, so they stay in their giant houses, and then nobody else can buy those houses, like a small family, or, a young family, so they don't have as much turnover. So we tried to explain that angle of looking at things. The state has said that, sorry, go ahead.
Diana, what is going to be the procedure for communities that do not want to buy in to this program? Is there going to be some kind of relief or initiative for them?
Well, the Attorney General has said that I don't think there's anything official yet, but they have said that that the state is considering removing the ability to control zoning, to have control over their own zoning for communities that don't comply with 3A. And of course, they would also lose all these funding sources. I had a quote here from another quote, because I figured this issue would come up. There's another quote from the Attorney General. All communities must comply with the law. They can't avoid their obligations under the law by foregoing the funding sources that would be lost. And the advisory, this was an advisory that was issued in March of 23. The advisory cautions that communities that fail to comply with the law may be subject to civil enforcement action and also risk liability under federal and state fair housing laws. The law requires that MBTA communities shall have a compliant zoning district, and it does not provide any mechanism by which a town or city may opt out of this requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. I have Vice President Van Hazinga.
Thank you, Mr. President. Listening to some of the comments, I think there might be some misconceptions about what this zoning change is going to do. For the simple fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of the parcels that are included are already developed. Is that correct? That there are some vacant lots, but they are a relatively small proportion. So what this is an exercise on paper to show that if you assumed that all of these parcels were vacant and you were building fresh, which they're not, you could build 2,618 units. But the odds of actually 2,618 units are impossible, correct? Because there are already buildings on almost all of these lots. So what this is just a change from what you can do on an exercise on paper for vacant parcels or parcels that are going to be redeveloped. So if you have a big lot that has one single family house on it, under this sort of zoning change, you could redevelop it with a higher density of apartments. Downtown, we don't have a lot of that. This is really targeted towards communities in suburban Boston that have very restrictive zoning that require very large lots that don't allow multifamily housing. It's a way to force those communities to allow multifamily housing. In Fitchburg, and especially downtown, the Smart Growth District, we already allow multifamily housing. We're just doing some tweaks so that it matches this formula of what we're required to do. So it's not a very big change at all. We already allow pretty high density through our multifamily permit process and through the Smart Growth District. This is just allowing it by right in the Smart Growth District and the portion of the FSU. But it's really just an exercise on paper to confirm. There might be some on projects that come forward, maybe a little bit higher density, but there won't be a very big change for what we allow currently. Is that correct?
You're exactly right.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically, maybe you could build up on top of an existing building, but the costs to do that, like the math just doesn't work, right? You probably would end up having to like partially demolish, and because structurally can it hold extra floors.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the math just doesn't really realistically work for, building on top of existing like that. So I think you have a few opportunities. We've talked about, the North Street lot and the Day and Main lot that have potential for development of dense housing, maybe 100-unit building, 150-unit building, sort of near the fire station. 520 Main Street that used to be Johnsonia, that's an opportunity, but everything else is really all built out.
Is it fair to state that the city has been trying to encourage dense multifamily development in the downtown area, irrespective of this requirement?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've already been encouraging. We've started doing that through Smart Growth.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just us complying, right, and fitting an existing overlay district into the compliance model, I guess. Yeah, and I'll just add, there are some cities, of course, that have in their downtown maybe zoning that doesn't allow any housing. You know, it only allows offices or retail and stuff. And so those cities now, if they put a 3A zone on those kind of areas, then it'll be easier for somebody to build housing there. And those empty offices might turn into housing, for example. And you already allow that here. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Lopez.
Hi. My question was already answered. My concern was this being a state mandate, what would be the consequences of not participating in it? And Diana already answered that.
All right. Thank you very much. Councilor Giannatalli.
How long has this whole effort taken from start to finish?
Well, it's taken us since about June last year, but some of that time was we weren't actively working. We were waiting for the state to review some of the pre-application materials we sent.
So 15 months?
So, you know, maybe
months?
not actively, 15 months, but not working that whole time.
So something that is just on paper to do what we're already doing for the most part took 15 months? How much money has this cost the state taxpayers? Because I know when we say grants, we're supposed to go like this because it's not coming out of the city coffer, but how much of my tax dollars for the state is going to do this? This thing where we're just putting it on paper?
Mass Housing Partnership has provided us grant funding to the tune of about $60,000.
$60,000 to do something that we're already doing. Okay. So with all due respect to the presenter, I mean, all I heard throughout the whole presentation is do it or we'll punish you. Not from you, from our illustrious AG. Do it or we're going to punish you. So much so that they are now taking Milton to Supreme Court of Massachusetts, who is, by the way, currently deliberating that case. They haven't adjudicated it yet. And one of their things they're deliberating is, was this law done properly? And they haven't rendered a decision yet. But, you know, these kinds of matters put me to sleep because we're told we don't have a choice but to accept this. So I don't even know why we have to have a presentation. We're being told to do it. The AG is threatening communities to do this. And as we all know in past history, what the state and the Fed tells us to do is always what's best for us. You know, so drives me crazy. You guys do what we tell you to do. We'll float you some bucks for the consultants and everybody to do what they've got to do, and then live with it. So I don't even know why I've got to vote for this tonight, quite honestly. It doesn't matter what I think, because I'm being threatened. A proverbial gun is being pointed to my head right now. So I just find it interesting how this is kind of dotting the I's and crossing the C's over what we've done at the cost of $60,000 and 15 months worth of work. So that's all. I mean, I hear everybody asking questions, but, you know, the buried lead is do this or we'll take you to federal or state Supreme Court. You know, that tells me how we're all working together. No, what this is the state doesn't know what to do about it. So they're forcing communities to accept what they think is the answer, and they're not the brightest bulbs in the branch, the legislature. They always find ways to do things for communities, but things that we actually need in our communities, they got nothing in the pockets. Nothing. But they got money for this. So I know Mr. President said not to opine, but this whole discussion has been around one central theme. Do it or we'll punish you. So, and it's not your fault, not your fault. This is directed at our illustrious state legislature, who is so concerned about housing that they fought tooth and nail against their own Democratic state auditor to audit them. That's how concerned they are about everything. So This is their solution for the housing crisis. I've been doing this a very long time. Our problem in Fitchburg is not housing. It's lack of industry. We need industry, not more housing. And if you want any evidence to that effect, 81% of our tax base is housing. 81%. So this is just going to make that go higher, so that when a resident gets their tax bill in a couple of months, they're going to come to me and go, why did my bill go up $300? Because you, madam or sir, take up 81% of the pie. And because of state policies, it's going to get worse for you. But I have nothing to say about it because I'm just a lowly representative at the local level. I'm not as smart as the state elected officials. So, appreciate the time you've put into this. All I heard from the very start when we talked about it, the very first comment you made, one of the first few slides was, do it or you'll be punished, and I tuned out. Doesn't matter what I think, because the AG has decreeth so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
I just have one other further question because it was brought up. You may or may not be aware that we're in a $645,000 shortfall for transportation to our already existing school children. So you mentioned about funding sources. Can you identify some of the funding sources that are going to help regulate what we have versus what we need? If you're talking about potentially not bringing in any more residents, not bringing any more family units with or without children, but what are the funding sources that are going to make up those downfalls, I guess, or those lack of funding? And we see it across all of our departments. We know that, yeah, we may be a population of 43,000, but we know that we're providing services for at least 50,000 residents. So again, I commend the effort, but how and what are those funding sources that are going to help us when we have budget shortfalls across every department?
So I think there's two pieces to that. There's existing funding that we can apply for that we would not have access to.
Without this?
If we do not comply. And there was a list in a slide, so it's a pretty extensive list. Let's see if we can bring that up.
Will you just send that, like specifically that screenshot, so I can see what those are? Okay.
So it's that right there.
Okay.
Things like MassWorks. So right now we have a MassWorks grant for a planning grant to improve Moran Square. We had a MassWorks grant in previous years for River Street. So those are things that we can apply for that we won't have access to if we don't comply. And then additionally, there is a line item in the housing bond bill that was approved specifically for MBTA Communities funding. I just happened to look at that today, but I'm not 100%. I want to say it was 50 million throughout the state, but I'm not 100% that's the number.
And did you say 50 million?
50 million. I believe that's what it is, but I'm not sure.
And is that divided by the 177 communities that are participating or that have availability to participate in this?
I'm not sure how that will be deployed. I don't know if that will be something that we have to proactively apply for, if it's something that's going to come automatically. I think it's that housing bond bill just passed in August, I believe, and they don't have any rules, regulations, or anything out that would describe how that works to us yet.
Right. Again, my only
I can't really answer the question fully.
hesitation is that I see all of those grant, and when those run out, like we've seen in years past, then we, as the taxpayers, are left either picking it up and funding it or letting it go by the wayside. So,
well, and some of those projects are just one-time, or funding sources are sort of one-time
complete a project, move on. So, for instance, the underutilized properties program, we had 2 private developers that both received large underutilized properties grants to redevelop their downtown properties into housing. So those would go away for the developers.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councillor Van Hazinga for clearing up a few things there. But one comment is, I think we should all be very concerned that if we don't vote for this, that the state is going to take Fitchburg's livelihood away. And I think that's very concerning.
Seeing no further questions, I do have one. The segment about site plan review standards, there was this sort of highlight of we can have these standards as long as they are not a means to deny a project. I just want to get some clarification on that. Does that mean that they can't, does that merely mean that they can't be used pretextually to deny a project, or does that mean that they cannot, under any circumstances, be a basis to deny a project? In other words, one of the listed items is traffic access. If someone brings a project forward and you guys on the planning board look at it and just say, no matter how you slice it, there is no way you put this project in here without backing up Main Street from the Boulder to the bridge. Can you say no, or do you have to say, well, I guess we're going to be backed up from the Boulder to the bridge?
So under the site plan review, we can look at traffic, and we can look at traffic studies, and it's also in compliance with what our zoning ordinance requirements already set out. So the site plan review is looking at all the zoning code and zoning in our ordinance and the zoning code, department comments and reviews for code compliance, and they have to meet that compliance criteria. So that site plan review brings all that together.
Right.
Aspects like that. So if they don't meet certain components of that or get those components waived, yes, the project can be denied. So it's not an absolute 100% each time. They still have, that's why all this design criteria and aspects are meant. And that traffic study, if you haven't read it in the red line version of the ordinance, there is a big section also on traffic in there that.
Yeah, I just wanted to get that one phrase there clarified, and thank you. So what I'm hearing is that, yes, theoretically, if the compliance problems were bad enough,
yes,
it could justify nixing the project.
Right.
That's all I wanted to make sure. Did you have additional clarification on that?
Yes. So what this is, the goal of this clause or segment is that a community cannot structure their site plan approval so that it makes development approvable impossible. It can't be an end around the process. So say, yes, this is allowed by right, but you have to meet impossible conditions, so in effect, it's not allowed. That's what that's a reference to.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. That is what I was hoping it was intended to mean. It's just, the way it's worded could go the other way. So I just wanted some clarification on that. Yeah, I'll just say briefly before we go to the members of the audience, I share the frustration of a lot of my colleagues with the fact that this, regardless of the fact that compliance is a relatively light lift for us here in Fitchburg, I still am incredibly frustrated that the state feels that it is okay to treat every community west of 95 as life support for the greater Boston area, to impose on us whatever requirements they deem suitable without allowing us to weigh in on what our community needs. It's what the state needs, and so Fitchburg must provide. I don't like that any better than any of my colleagues who have, raised to that point. And I agree, we really don't have a meaningful choice in this except in how to comply, and I am very pleased with the work that has gone into allowing us to comply with essentially minimal to no pain on our part. That being said, we don't have a choice. we can't, even if the court did decide that we were allowed to opt out of this at the cost of foregoing all this grant funding, we can't. That list of grant funding is what we've been using for the last decade to try to bring Fitchburg up to speed on things that we've historically fallen behind on. So I don't like it. You don't like it. I'm sure an awful lot of my constituents don't like it. But I am not, we can't cut off our nose to spite the state's face. It's not a fight we can win at this juncture. That being said, if all on the council and planning board have been heard, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Come on up.
Sorry. Mary Jo Bohart, Economic Development Director. I had 2 points. One was just a very quick, maybe it's more of a comment, but there were a few questions asking about the types of grants, and this particular slide shows the array of Commonwealth funded grants that often are used. We've used many of them. I just wanted to share a singular number to give you just a window. It's not all of the grant funding in this current grant funding cycle. It's just what Fitchburg was recently awarded in what's called the One Stop for Growth, and there are 8 different grants that address a number of things, not just in the downtown, throughout the city. $2.8 million. That's not the full extent of what we would have to say bye-bye to, but that's just an example in one particular funding year. So that just puts it in perspective. I actually wanted to share another thought separate from all that. We don't often think of housing and economic development, or we didn't used to think of it in the same breath. You used to think of the economy and commercial growth and this and that, and then housing, and they often used to be very separate. What we have seen in our state, what we're seeing across the country, is that the lack of housing production for the past few decades has been what's driven up the cost. And just today, the Worcester Business Journal had an article that the median house price, and this is probably single family, in Fitchburg has now hit $400,000 based on the last month's sales. Pretty shocking if you think of a young person, starting out in life and so on. But housing, if we don't, as a Commonwealth or us as a community, chip away at it through added housing production, it will affect our economy. We can say that here at the local level. We certainly heard it at the state level. Massachusetts is very, very focused on the fact that people are moving to other states because it's too expensive to live in Massachusetts. So I just wanted to remind everybody, we often speak of housing and economic development, but in this particular subject, they're intertwined. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor? Come on up.
Good evening. I wanted to just, and this is off the cuff, so I'm sorry if it's a little disorganized, briefly address a couple of the issues that were brought up. First of all, the thought that this is a meaningless process because we are forced to comply. I really suggest that you do not adopt that attitude. It is never meaningless to try to make your situation better. It is never meaningless. We are forced to adopt some sort of statute right now, unless there's a different result in a court case, or we have a consequence to face. But the process that has been gone through in order to choose the method of compliance, and it has been chosen to produce the minimal amount of compliance that is required under the law, is not meaningless. The easiest thing to do in this process would have been to come in, make a half-mile radius around the T-station, plop it down, and be done with it. That would have been very quick. We probably could have adopted this 6 months or a year ago. But what we have worked to achieve is minimize the blunt instrument that the state has forced upon us. It is not meaningless. It is not meaningless to look at the way that that has been done in this process. Further, I just want to emphasize that I truly agree that the state has given us this mandate thinking, well, it's provided the T stations, so it's given you the transportation that is needed in order to support all of these housing units. What it needs to do is to give us the roadway funds that are required in order to support the kind of population growth that is possible, not likely, but possible under the revised zoning. And finally, I'd just like to remind the council that if, in fact, we turn out not to be required to adopt this zoning ordinance, council can reverse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor? All right. Anyone speaking in opposition to the petition?
Jacqueline Ch, Fitchburg resident. You should have held this hearing before paying out-of-town consultant Dream Collaborative for over a year, and the state shouldn't be telling us how to zone anyways. I oppose this because it doesn't go far enough. Cramming everyone into a small area near the train station is not a solution to our housing crisis. I am a YIMBY, which stands for Yes in My Backyard. There should be no minimum lot sizes, no minimum square footage for homes, and only 2 zones, residential and commercial. Then you wouldn't waste money on consultants, and you'd simplify permitting, becoming more business friendly. Other communities with no zoning range from small New Hampshire towns to Houston, Texas. Fitchburg's failed housing strategy has focused on huge taxpayer subsidies to rich out-of-town developers. For instance, the tax breaks for Moran Square apartments were over $400,000 per unit, more than the average price of a single-family home in the city at the time. This only drives housing inflation. A better approach is to remove zoning barriers and allow tiny houses, creating a community where individuals can live the American dream of home ownership rather than depending on landlords. An ownership society leads to neighborhood stability, less crime, greater pride in property maintenance, and an overall better quality of life. Instead of saying, I got mine, keep everyone else out, the view of some, including a few of our agricultural commissioners, we should go back to the drawing board on zoning, not tinker around the edges. We should recognize the fundamental right to housing for our local citizens. The focus on MBTA stations for Boston commuters to gentrify out our existing working class population is shameful. We need Yes in My Backyard policies for the people already here. And as to that slide, a lot of those are really useless grants. LAND is the one proposed for rural farmers to remove property from the tax rolls, which would hurt and not help us. Collaborative workspaces is just a room in the new library. We need things that really help us.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition?
Good evening. I'm Tom Donnelly. I'm really not speaking in opposition to it, but just to bring up one of the grants that was brought up in this room. I went to a meeting a couple weeks ago about Moran Square, and they showed a photo of a flood, and they talked about doing underground utilities, which impressed me. But they also, in this room, there were two other people that I recognized. They also want to change the intersection. They want to, when you go Main Street and you want to take a left on Lunenburg Street, you're not going to be, you have to go around, they're going to change it. I asked a question. Is this going to be better for traffic or better for pedestrians? The answer was, it will be safer. I said, will it be better for traffic or for pedestrians? I started at that intersection in 1954. I crossed it 4 times a day for 6 years, going to elementary school. I've never seen a problem from people coming down Summer Street to take a right on Lunenburg. They're going to eliminate the right on the side of the monument. It's going to be a nightmare, in my opinion. but that's one of the grants that we're going to get. I think that we need it for sewer, for the water, for the drains, but I don't think there's going to be a fiasco if they do that. And almost no citizens, but it's a grant, and I see so many grants, we can't say no to grants. That's what I'm opposed to. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just note, just for the record and for the public and for our respected commenter, that if any such change to the street pattern is proposed, it would have to come through this body. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? All right, if all have been heard, I declare the hearing closed. The matter is before the joint body.
Motion to adopt 199-24.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Do I have any comments on the motion? All right, I'll just say again, thank you to our team for the work that has been put in. I know this didn't come to us in a form that we wanted, but you guys have done a great job of ensuring that we can comply with as little impact to the city as possible. And I appreciate the work that has gone into that. Councillor Fleming on the motion.
I'm just wondering if we can get the new map of this sent to our email so that we can see the new map. As you said, this was...
No, that is the map.
That is the map? Oh, okay.
It's just a zoom. She was trying to say it's not the whole zoning map because we couldn't fit it on one page. Okay. That's the only part that's impacted by what you're voting on.
Thank you.
Well, and that's not the official city zoning map. That's
Right.
still...
I'm sorry. We have closed for deliberation. So.
Sorry.
So any further comments on the motion? All right. Is there any objection to the passage of the motion? Oh, Councillor Cruz, go ahead.
I believe we need a roll call with people.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? We're going to do, because of the way the clerk's listings are written, we'll do the council first and then take a roll call of the planning board, but the tally will be joint.
Councilor Kuchar?
No.
Councilor Cruz?
Yes.
Councilor Di Natale?
No.
Councilor Fleming?
No.
Councilor Green?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Thank you. Councilor Schultz?
Yes.
Councilor Van Hazinga?
Yes.
Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
President Zarella?
Yes.
Councilor Boschman?
Yes.
Six to four.
All right,
In favor.
motion carries in the council. Madam Chair?
All right. Roll call vote. I'll say Peter Cabadagli,
Yes.
Paul Fontaine,
Yes.
Alex Lopez,
Yes.
Tracy McGrath,
Yes.
Amanda Keck,
Yes.
Paula Karen, yes.
Thank you very much. That appears to be unanimous. Both bodies having voted and both having a favorable result. This is, just quick point of clarification, this is already in its final ordinance form from the solicitor, or is there further work that the solicitor intends to do to finalize it?
This was the first reading. This is the final form that we have prepared. The solicitor has reviewed it. She has not recommended any changes.
All right. In that case, in order to expedite the matter prior to the state deadline, I would ask for a separate motion to, we just voted on the petition form. I would ask for a separate motion to pass the ordinance through its first reading.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second to pass the ordinance through its first reading. Actually, yeah, no, I'll get to that in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
In opposition? 1, 2, 3, 4. Carries 6-4. I am in favor.
Yep.
And also, I missed a bit of housekeeping before that vote. If with the consent of the planning board, I will declare the joint session to be concluded, as we have resolved the one matter that we were meeting on.
So moved.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your participation and all your work on this.
Can I ask while there?
Okay.
I bet you we're going to take a recess here any minute. You can ask for recess too. Once you get this joint convention.
Just trying to keep up.
Yep. All right. So that being concluded, we'll now return to our regular order of business. Report of the Committee on Records. Councillor Walsh.
President, can we have a quick 5-minute recess for...
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. It has been a long time. If there's no objection, we will take a 5-minute recess.
Sounds good.
Resume our session at 9:32 p.m. and move this along as quickly as we can because I'm sure we're all starting to get tired. Report of the Committee on Records. Councillor Walsh.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Records actually met tonight. I think it might be a first. To review the characterization of Sam Cole's comments in the minutes of the 5/2/23 City Council meeting. The vote was 2-1 not to change the record. And on the minutes from the last City Council meeting, we've reviewed the records and they appear to be in order.
Motion to accept the report.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the report and recommendations of the Committee on Records are accepted. We have communication, and we have Mr. Bunnell here, so rather than read off anything, I will let him come up and give his communication. And thank you for being patient with us for the last 2.5 hours.
Oh, no problem. It was very, very interesting. Thank you for having me, Mr. President and councilmen and women. So I have 2 in-kind grants that I just wanted to make you guys aware about. One is from the National Parks and Recreation Association. They have a program called the Million Coaches Challenge. We were one of 39 cities in the entire country and one of 2 cities in New England to receive this grant. Basically, there were different coaching, training organizations that provided different trainings for coaches. We went with Positive Coaching Alliance. They're a nonprofit organization that basically is trying to help teach people how to be a coach in a positive manner. There is a crisis throughout the country with youth sports. Less and less kids are participating, and that a good portion of the reason why is because of who is coaching them and how they're coached. They don't enjoy going back. And what Positive Coaching Alliance does is they teach people how to coach in a positive manner by helping to build these kids up so they want to come back. I chose Positive Coaching Alliance in my former life. I actually was a certified, or still am a certified coach through Positive Coaching Alliance, and I also was a trainer for Positive Coaching Alliance. So they're a great organization, and we did do the organization that we're associated with, the Parks and Recreation Department with B League Basketball. So we had our coaches, our season just started this past, actually yesterday, we started practices. The coaches that are doing B League, they obtain the free training, and I'm working with Positive Coaching Alliance to continue to expand that grant to some of the other youth sports, whether that is soccer, football, baseball, softball, or even street hockey. So we're working with them right now to hopefully get more adults involved in the later wintertime and spring. So that's that grant.
Congratulations on that highly competitive grant. Well done.
Thank you. The second one is from the Doug Flutie Foundation. They have a revolving grant. It's for a communication board for nonverbal children to help them communicate when they're in a park or playground. We have a playground, the inclusive playground over at Park Hill, that is getting some work done on the other side. So I found this grant, and we're going to be receiving a communication board that's going to be put up there to help these children within our community and from other members outside our community that come and visit the playground, that will give them an extra tool to help use and communicate when they're at the playground.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Councilor
I was looking at that communication board. It's intriguing. It's going to be a great asset.
Yeah, it's very cool. I believe we also have one, I know it's not at one of my parks, but I think South Street Elementary has one in their playground, if I recall. And if it's something that is beneficial, they're not an overly expensive piece of equipment. The Doug Flutie Foundation does provide one, so we are getting one. But if it's something that could be used or needed in some of the other playgrounds that we have, this is something that, once we receive feedback and see how it works, I'd be very open to having this in other playgrounds as well to better service a portion of the community in a variety of areas throughout the city.
Great, thanks.
I think that's very cool. It's becoming more and more widely recognized these days that autistic kids, nonverbal autistic kids, have all the same interior life that other kids do. They just don't know how to communicate it with the neurotypical or non-autistic people in their lives. There are a lot of different techniques. This is one of them, and even if it only allows them to communicate relatively simplistic things more easily, like I want to do this activity more, or I need to go potty or something like that, that's still a large step. It makes a big difference in these kids and their families' lives. And so I'm very glad to see Fitchburg, taking steps to modernize in this manner and to serve a very underserved segment of our population. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And also, just as another side note, during our summer playground program, we do get children that have various degrees of autism and other type of situations that they're figuring out and dealing with. So having something like this at the playground, I think, is not only going to be beneficial throughout the regular year, but even more importantly, our programs that we offer, it's going to be a tool right there for the kids and our counselors to use pretty much on a daily basis.
Excellent.
Make a motion, please.
Councilor Schultz.
I was just going to ask about the Positive Coaching Alliance. You mentioned it's going to spread to other sports. Do we have enough grant money to get all of the coaches involved with all of our?
So the fortunate thing about the Million Coaches Challenge is that they want to get 1 million coaches certified throughout the country. So that it's not, we don't receive any financial money. We're basically, instead of paying for the training, they're giving us the training for free. So
there's no limit?
It's just working with them to see how many of the original request that I made was for 20 coaches. We had 9 fulfill that of the coaches that signed up, because we were still looking for more coaches at the time. But like I said, in continuing to work with them, they just put another round out, and they want to keep continuing to get more and more adults certified, whether that's through the Positive Coaching Alliance. There's a Nike training. There's a couple other different ones. We were communicating back and forth as we had to fill out a post-training survey, and they asked how we liked it, what they could improve on, where we go from here. So I've taken the next steps to say, all right, so what can we do now? Can we get more of the coaches now that we're getting more to fill out all the rest of the teams? Can I do another training for them? Can we add on for soccer, football, baseball, softball, like towards the wintertime or towards the springtime? So I'm working with them to coordinate that now.
It's extremely important to have that positive coach in your life, and there are coaches still out there that need that training, James, as you well know.
Oh, absolutely, and you know, it's just one of those things. As a father of three and a former, you know, in my former life, and as a coach, you know, when I'm a parent looking at something and to get even my own children into a program, when a program is going to say that their coaches are certified through a legitimate organization and a training, that holds a little more weight. So I know that when I do drop my kids off at practice or when they are at a game, you know, I have a little more comfort in knowing that, well, this person actually took the time, or this organization took the time to go through this training to make sure their coaches are being certified and they're teaching the kids the right things.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Boschman.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, I play to win, so there's no being nice with me. No, I'm not joking around. My question is, do you have to be a coach to go to that, or can anybody go?
Usually the trainings are set up. I mean, if you wanted to, I would be more than happy to invite you the next time around if anybody wants to participate, but usually it's geared towards the people that want to participate in coaching. But I'll be more than happy to extend that invitation out, especially if we needed spots. If I knew sooner, we could have filled, you could have topped in. We had pizza.
No, I just thought I asked if somebody wants to know. Maybe we need it for the council. All right.
Am I not nurturing your self-esteem? Councilor Van Hazinga.
I just was wondering that, I know in your letter you mentioned you were inviting Biddy League coaches, but if you have extra slots that you haven't been able to fill through those coaches, have you thought about offering it to some of the other non-city youth sports leagues in the city, like baseball, youth soccer, street hockey?
So the training had already occurred. It was last week. We had our coaches meeting and our training, so I did have open spots and I did reach out. Football, they weren't ready to set it up yet, but that's why I'm working with the president of AYF to try to do something in the late winter, spring. Soccer, we tried to get something to work, but it just didn't work out. So the same baseball, softball, I had them in mind, but at the time I thought we were having enough coaches. We didn't, and so I was trying to last minute to try to scramble to get some of those seats filled. But that's, like I said, why I'm pushing to do another one or continue to offer this to get, like I said, as many organizations in the city. It's easier for the ones that the Biddy League, because that is something that the Parks and Recreation Department partners with Pell to own and eventually we'll be taking over. The other organizations are just the extension right now because they just use our facilities. We're not really overly involved because they're all separately run. So, but if that's something that we can help out with, that's what I'm trying to do.
All right. I was thinking it sounds like a great program, and if we have opportunities to spread it out and get it to us.
Oh, absolutely, it is. And as much as I can help the youth organizations with that, you know, I know, like I said, speaking to youth football, Jason and I had a great conversation. That was something that he was very interested in. Same with soccer. It's just trying to coordinate it all and get everybody in, whether it's the same room for an in-person training or a virtual training.
All right. Thank you very much for your efforts. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any further questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Thanks. Have a great night, guys.
You too. Next up, we have the report of the Finance Committee, and I apologize, Councilor Giannatalli, you'll have to refresh my memory. I don't remember if I chaired this one or not.
You did.
That was me, okay.
You called me.
Finance Committee met on November 7th. I was chairing in lieu of Councilor Giannatalli. We took up a large number of items. I'm going to rattle through them quickly. Stop me if there's anything that anyone needs clarification or comments on. 18524, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby raise and appropriate the sum of $645,000, crediting school department expenses for the purpose of funding a shortfall in the fiscal year 2024 net school spending requirement. That was unanimous. I am going to make a clarifying comment on that one. It was explained to us at the Finance Committee meeting that while transportation costs are not themselves net school spending, the way it works is when we have an overrun in our transportation costs, the school department pays for it first, which then reduces our spend on net school spending. In other words, we spend, say, $1 million on net school spending. I mean, it's more than that, but we spend $1 million on net school spending. If they then have to pull out of that $1,600,000 to pay for transportation, we have to fill that back up to meet net school spending. That's why it's being presented as a net school spending requirement, because we're basically refilling the kitty, so to speak. 18624, order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $11,134, same to be charged against reserve for appropriation TNC per ride assessment, credited to DPW capital expenses street repair for the purpose of road paving. That was unanimous. 18724, City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from a grant source for nature-based solutions for a resilient Coolidge Park in the approximate amount of $323,160 to help mitigate flooding impacts by increasing stormwater storage, recharge, and water quality. Unanimous. 18824, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Community Compact Grant in the approximate amount of $50,000 to develop a multi-year paving management plan. Unanimous. 18924, City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Community Compact Grant Program in the approximate amount of $40,000 for a capital improvement plan. Unanimous. City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Department of Transportation Shared Streets and Spaces Grant Program in the approximate amount of $246,816.56 to create a formal shared use path along Railroad Street to the future pedestrian bridge. Unanimous. 19124, City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Massachusetts Department of Culture and Recreation Mass Trails Grant Program in the approximate amount of $78,005 to improve a section of trail at the summit of Rollstone Hill and to install rock walk signage. Unanimous. 19224, City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities 40-hour Smart Growth Program in the approximate amount of $321,000 for Low Park and other activities and city improvements.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second. Okay. I have a motion and second. On the motion, Councillor Green.
Yes, for my question has to do with 18524.
Sure.
So when we ended budget talks last year, the number that we had floating around was that there was going to be around a $300,000 shortfall. So to see it double that plus, I'm a little concerned on how did the transportation cost get so out of hand that we were not given a heads up that it was going to be $645,000. I mean, how do you comprehend that much of a shortfall? I'm just confused, knowing that the school budget, $85 million, 50.29% of taxes that are collected. So where are we getting $645,000?
Yeah,
it's just a statement. I know. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I share your concerns. I got you, Councillor. If I would suggest talking to Jeremy Roach about that because I know he has more details. Unless the mayor would like to weigh in.
Yeah, Auditor Cronin can provide more context as to where we're raising those funds as well. But, you know, the transportation costs are $1.2 million, just over budget.
Okay, and speaking to that, is this the yellow school bus transportation, or is this the little vans that are set aside for children that need to go to specialized programs or that need, to be the only one on the bus to and from? And is any of this with school choice transportation?
So the majority of this excess funding is special needs transportation.
Thank you.
Councilor Gianatali.
So the assessor told me that the $645,000 is coming out of new growth, which is part of the general fund, because of a reassessment or a re-eval of Great Wolf. That was primarily what allowed the growth to be higher than what was put in the budget for FY25, which allowed us to take our tax levy ceiling up that amount for the growth, which covers this overrun. So it's not coming out of free cash, not coming out of stabilization. While it is true that earlier this year we had a transportation overrun, and I don't want to call it a budget overrun, the school department is in an unfortunate position every so often where they have to renegotiate these transportation contracts. And at the time the school committee and the superintendent put the budget together for transportation, they don't know what the number is going to be. They have to make an estimate. They know that they're in negotiation. They know it's going to go up. They don't know how much. They don't know what the bus company is going to come back. And unfortunately for Fitchburg, for those who say we'll get someone different, they try to, but they can't because First Student has a monopoly on this district, this area. They're the only game in town. So they have technically carte blanche to jack up their rates however high they want. And so if the school department puts a budget forward that says $1.5 million for transportation, while they're in negotiation, they have to have a budget by July 1st. And then First Student comes at them with $2.1 million, what's the school department going to do? They got to come back to us for the difference. And because they have to pay the busing contract right away, they've got to front the money, and then they give us the bill to cover what they had to cipher off of net school spending to cover that contract. There was a comment made earlier from one of our constituents that, and you know, many times I agree with her and there are times I don't. I spoke to Mr. Roach and Mr. Thompson about this. This is not driven by the migrant crisis or whatever you want to call it. It is simply a matter of we had a renewal on our contract. Our contract went up because they don't have any bargaining power. So irrespective of that issue, the costs are going to go up. The costs have gone up on transportation for the last decade to varying degrees, but this year it's been astronomical, as we all know, with everything else costing us. That is why. So I think the school department signed a 3-year deal, so they now have clarity for fiscal year 26 and 27. But they didn't have clarity for 24 and 25. I think 24 was a 1-year deal to bridge the gap until they could get a longer-term agreement. So in short, it's because our busing company, who has a monopoly on this area, that's the price they came in with, and we had no choice but to accept it. And so they paid the bill, and now they're giving us the reimbursement slip, and that's what this is. Plain and simple. The costs were going to go up irrespective of the number of students. That doesn't play into it. It's just fuel, equipment, it's the general cost of doing business. These guys always jack their costs up because technically, frankly, they can. No one's going to compete with them. There's no one else around. So that's the story behind that. Are we also talking about anything else here?
Well, we have a motion for the whole.
Oh, I was going to,
so.
okay, so I also want to comment on a couple of the matters, if I could.
Yeah, can I just comment briefly on that one first?
Yep.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for clarifying that. That was actually explained to us at Finance, but to be perfectly honest, I had forgotten what the explanation had been. I plead at 10 o'clock. And so it still is concerning because, like you said, like Councilor Gianatali said, we don't have bargaining power, and that's always a bad position to be in. But it is at least encouraging to know that it is only due to the known factor of, you know, a monopolistic provider rather than factors entirely outside our knowledge and control for the foreseeable future. And With that said, yeah, you can have the floor back, Councillor.
Well, I should have asked if we could take out 188-24 and 189-24 and vote on those separately. And I asked for that because I am in opposition to both of these grants. Granted, they are grants, but I think that this is just a waste of grant funding for a pavement management plan this city doesn't need. Doesn't need it. Ask the DPW commissioner, doesn't need it. The city has had a pavement management plan for 35, 40 years by highly qualified engineers in the field. They have chapter and verse. I have the letter from Mr. Erickson and Ryan Killeen of what their plan has been, and it was 8 pages they gave me. This plan, in addition to the capital improvement plan, you don't need outside services to do these things, okay? Never needed it before, you don't need it now. What this is this is a front. This is a front to tell the public we're doing something new and different without telling them that these plans are going to get you zero in more money. None. Mr. Erickson told me we need $11 million a year. $11 million a year. And once the policies of this administration go into effect starting next year, where we're stealing from Chapter 90 to do basic DPW maintenance, his words, not mine, less money is going to be used out of Chapter 90 for paving. Less paving. Enjoy the paving this year. It's from money largely from prior fiscal years. Next year, you'll see the fruits of this administration's labor. Less paving. Mr. Erickson, May 22nd, 2024, just repeating what he said. These plans are going to accomplish nothing. We already have them. What the city needs is money. Money, lots of it. Not this. This is taking a weathered object in a weathered box and wrapping it with a nicer bow. That's all this is. It's optics, because we can't get the money. That's always been the case under Jeff Bean, Mylott, Whitney, Wong, Di Natale, and now Squalia. That's always been the case. It was never about planning. So now we're going to hire an outside consultant to do what our engineers are already qualified to do and have been doing. And I'm supposed to accept it because it's a grant. Well, go ahead and pass it. Give me this illustrious plan for both capital needs and streets, and I'll see how many roads extra get paved over this year and the year before. I can tell you right now, it'll be less, irrespective of this. Now, I've also been told that this plan is going to focus on the good roads, preserve those longer, and then we'll nickel and dime the bad roads, because once we use all the money in Chapter 90, outside of pothole repairs, microsurfacing, crack sealing, things we've always done, we're going to have next to no money left for the bad roads. And I asked Commissioner Erickson, what's the percentage of bad roads in our city? And he said over 84%. So the plan going forward will basically be take care of the nice roads and let the bad ones get far worse. So this is wonderful. Yay, take a victory lap. We got a plan in place. We don't need it. We need money. And that's what I was saying earlier about the 3A, or whatever the hell it's called. You know, our legislature is wonderful at forcing us to do things, but when it comes to road infrastructure, they've got flies flying out of the pockets. Okay? And I'm going to close with this, because, you know, the usual crowd who thinks I say these things for some obvious reason, which is what I've been saying for 10 years, there's only 3 ways to fix our paving deficit. This is the truth. This is what people aren't told when you don't have any clue what you're doing. You either raise property taxes at the ballot box, 2.5 proposition, not a debt exclusion, 2.5 prop. It has to be an increase every year forever. Option 1. Option 2 is more state funding. Well, I have a better chance of losing 100 pounds by the next year before that happens. All right? And then the third option is you have to, so it's property tax override, more state funding, or this is the real one, massive budget cuts. I don't think that's going to happen. Well, I don't know. I can guarantee something's going to happen coming up, because more than half of the free cash we use to balance this budget is gone next year. But those are your three options, folks. That's it, not this. This isn't going to do anything. And if you talk to the engineers, they'll say to you, we already have a plan. We already have street scanning technology. We already have this. This is what you do when you don't have an answer. Sell it as this is the answer. Well, the public doesn't want to listen to me because of my last name, so we'll see how many roads get paved starting next year. May 22nd, 2024, fatv.org. At the 49-minute mark, watch it. For God's sakes, folks, watch it. If you don't want to listen to me because of my last name. So, I'm a no on these because they're useless. And I was in capital budgeting and planning at Textron Defense Systems for 6 years. I was the head of capital planning in my division. You know how you get a capital improvement plan? You don't hire a consultant.
President, I'll take back my motion so we can take this out.
Okay.
You don't hire an outside consultant to do a capital management plan. You get your stakeholders in the room, your department heads, and you tell them, what are our needs? Because Chief Suarez, Chief Martineau, Commissioner Erickson, everybody knows what their needs are. You don't need some genius outside the city to tell you what the needs are.
Counselor, you've made your point. It's 10 o'clock. Let's...
Need the money. This isn't going to get you any money.
Councillor Rochman is withdrawing his motion so that we can receive a motion for all of the report excluding 188 and 189. Do I have a motion?
I wanted to ask about another item on the report. Am I
not one of those two, though?
No.
Okay, how about we do it in the reverse then? Can I have a motion on 188 and 189?
So moved. Second.
All right, I have a motion to accept the recommendation of the committee on 188 and 189-24. All in favor?
Mr. President,
on the motion, Councillor, go ahead.
A lot of people here. I just want to get one thing straight to everybody here. I agree. I understand what he's saying. I agree, because we said this at the meeting, at the finance meeting, to Liz. But my thing is this. There is another option, because me, you, and Andy put a petition in, but nobody wanted to hear it. Huh?
I didn't.
No, it was just you.
You wanted with it. I mean, it's all right. Well, you didn't put in it. Auntie and I, but you got on board. And so we could have solved the problem, but we didn't want to solve the problem. Just like we don't want to solve the problem now.
Let's discuss that going forward, because like I said, it's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to be keeping everyone a little tighter from here on out.
I'm just saying that.
All right,
so for the record, Mr. President, I know Mr. Van Housen can speak for himself, but he didn't put the petition forward. He said that the people should have a say in it. Yep. Whereas a lot of us other ones...
We'll have a chance to discuss that if and when it is brought up again. Okay, 188 and 189-24. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
In opposition?
1, 2, 3.
4 in opposition, passes 6-4. Now, the remainder of the report of the committee, of the Finance Committee. Councillor Schultz.
Yeah, I wanted to, since Director Murphy is still in attendance, I thought maybe I'd ask about 190-24 about the shared use path for Railroad Street in my ward, because I had some opposition to parking issues on Railroad Street, and I'm just wondering how this shared use path is going to affect the parking on Railroad Street.
So the section of Railroad Street that is extremely narrow, there won't be any parking there, because you can't get 2 lanes there. But there will be a shared use path on the road, on Railroad Street. That's the intention of this. Yeah. We are trying to preserve as much parking as we possibly can. We have heard that
from the residents that they're concerned about losing any of their parking.
Right. And the proposal to move the parking down to that vacant lot, that isn't going to happen, right?
I mean, that is still a...
They were in opposition to that.
Yeah, I mean, that vacant lot, that's 22 3rd Street that you're referring to, could become a parking lot, a municipal parking lot, whether it's for those folks or for permit holders or for other folks. That really hasn't been decided. And that sort of goes beyond the scope of that grant. You know, that's a separate conversation about that.
Yeah, they were really in favor of moving their cars down.
I understand.
It was a safe location for the cars. So.
You know, I will say I don't know that the parking that exists right now is technically legal parking. That road is a very unique. That section of road is very unique. It sort of predates road regulations and zoning, and it wouldn't be created today because it's a very narrow road, and we've explored different options. The best option still seems to be going down Railroad Street with a shared use path on the road.
How many parking spaces are going to be lost on Railroad Street, would you estimate?
It's only that section where it narrows. So I guess that would be beyond 4th Street. I think after 4th Street, that's where you'd lose the parking, but not before 4th Street.
So just because this is something I had recently been looking at with the changes to the parking citations that we recently passed, I will note that if I'm thinking of the correct stretch of street, in that segment, none of those are legal parking spots anyway, because they don't leave at least 10 feet of unobstructed lane if you've got a car there. So technically, you know, I understand the residents' concerns, but technically they're not losing any parking spots if that's the segment we're talking about, because if enforcement were more aggressive, they'd be getting ticketed for parking there already.
Yeah, they've been parking there for years.
Oh, I understand. And I'm not saying they should necessarily start getting ticketed out of the blue. I'm just saying it's a spot that was already an issue, and you know, it sounds like this isn't really exacerbating the issue so much as making it clearer that you can't park in the spots that already would have obstructed the street to park in. So just added info. That's all.
So there's no Director Murphy. There's no alternative for them at this time.
We have not identified an alternative. Believe me, we've worked with our consultant. We've worked with DPW. The last meeting we had was actually within the last couple of months, and we had DPW, our consultants. We had police. We had fire. We had my office, all meeting on site to try to evaluate the best way that we could do this. And we actually do think we made some improvements to preserve more of the parking with our plan. But unfortunately, that one very narrow section, there's not a lot we can do to keep the parking. It's just so narrow there.
So you've added some spaces to offset the ones that are going to be lost, would you say?
Not in that section.
Okay.
No.
So they're going to be parking further away from their dwellings then?
My guess would be that there would continue to be some parking not legally as it is now. That I don't know that there's necessarily going to be a ton of change for them. It's just that now they might be more exacerbating the illegal parking that's happening.
Okay. Well, thank you for the information. I leave the floor.
Councilor Brochman.
I just don't want. I'm siding with Bernie on this. You know, I don't want people, because they live on Railroad Street, they have to move their car 3 blocks up the road and walk back down because they don't have enough parking. I think there's too much to ask. I think it's absolutely wrong, to be honest with you, for a rail trail to do. I mean, I think if the rail trail was that concerned about it, and the people were that concerned about it, then they should have made a proposal for those houses and taken over the houses where we had a problem with the parking situation or the cars. I feel what you, Bernie, I don't know if I'm going to support this now. That makes a big difference. Because if it was in my ward, the first one that comes is more important is the residents. So that's my thing. They lived there a long time, some of them, and they bought this house because they could afford it, and they with the understanding that they had parking right there. So that's the problem I'm having, sir. And I don't think it's right that we come on with a new idea and saying we're going to make everything fine and dandy for a certain few, and we're going to ruin it for them. I don't think that's right. I honestly don't believe that. So I think we ought to hold that one, to be honest, quite frankly, until she comes back to us with a better plan.
Personally, I would not be in favor of that. That's why I brought up what I did, because I understand that people are going to park where they feel like they have to park, but actually, I'm looking at a picture of Railroad Street in that segment right now on Vice President Van Hazinga's computer, and if you have a car parked there right now, there's no room for emergency vehicles to get through. And as much as I sympathize with the need of the residents for parking, I can't sympathize with residents blocking emergency access for the sake of not having to park further away. The emergency access has to come first because, you know, even if they themselves feel like I'm willing to take that risk, they can't make that choice for their neighbors. That if one of their neighbors has a medical emergency or a law enforcement emergency or a fire, they can't get services because there's, I mean, I'm eyeballing it, but I would say that with a large-ish car parked on one side of that segment of Railroad Street, you could just barely fit a Mini Cooper through the gap. You could not fit even a full-size sedan, much less a fire truck.
I understand that, Mr. President. I see that. And I understand it wholeheartedly. I understand that. But for 50 years, nobody said a damn word. Now all of a sudden we put a rail trail in, and now it's a big, big issue. That's my problem.
Sometimes things like that are the impetus and opportunity that we have to remedy a problem that no one was looking at before. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to live on Railroad Street and find out that, you know, if my daughter started choking on a hard candy or something, and something happened to her, God forbid, because an ambulance couldn't get through, I don't want to say how I would feel towards my neighbors at that point. Let's just say it would not be the warm and cuddly Anthony Zarella that you're used to seeing. So
warm and cuddly.
Councilor Zarella, you know,
go ahead, Councilor.
You'd like to think that there'd be another solution that we could come up with. You know, I don't know about expanding the width of the street, but has that even been looked at, to even look at that?
That entire area is built out. There's no width to be had without taking somebody's property. So that would be the alternative, is we would have to take people's properties.
What happened?
We did explore putting the trail behind the properties, and MBTA said no, we can't do that because we're too close to the active rail line.
Hmm? So you did explore that. Yeah, I was thinking of that as well.
Yeah. That's the ideal solution, but we already got the no there.
Motion to approve 191-24.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve 191-24. I think we're actually talking about 190, Councilor?
192. Oh, my mistake, 190-24.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. In opposition? 2 in opposition. Motion carries 8-2.
Motion to approve the remainder of the Finance Committee report.
I have a motion and second to approve the remainder of the recommendations of the Finance Committee. If there is no objection, I'll take this by unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is approved. We have we have 4 orders for finance. If no one objects, I'll waive the reading. Those will stand referred to finance. I see no objection. We then have an ordinance in final reading This is an ordinance, Chapter 44, entitled Salaries, be amended by adding the following position: Municipal Hearing Officer, who will report to the Executive Director of Community Development and Planning and will receive a stipend of $200 per month and $80 per case. Again, this is in final reading. This is the one that we have already voted on once in petition form and once in ordinance form.
Motion to approve.
Councillor Green.
Just for clarification, and considering that Ms. Murphy is still here, that what we approved, so I guess moving forward with this, because what we approved is now not the case because there's been a recusal of the person that we were going to appoint, that we actually did appoint.
So, Councillor, we voted before on the appointment of the person. This is addressing the position. Yeah,
right.
Not, so no matter who fills it, they'll get the same.
Are we not, so are then we not taking on this person as a new city employee?
The position is posted and could be filled by an existing city employee or a non-city employee, but it wouldn't change the ordinance.
So if it's a new city employee, that city employee is only going to be paid $200 per month and $80 per case?
Yes.
Like the planning board and zoning board chairs receive a small stipend, but nothing else.
Okay. So this would probably equate to a larger amount than what the chairs receive.
Okay.
That's going to be how many times a month? Twice?
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Is there any objection to passing? Oh, sorry, I don't have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and second to pass Ordinance 193-24 through its third and final reading to be enrolled, ordained, and advertised. Do I have any objection? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. And that concludes our business for the evening.
Motion we adjourn.
All right, motion and second to adjourn. We are adjourned. I know it's very late, but can I ask you all to stay for 1 minute?